So, I I'll just go ahead and give you a little disclaimer ahead of time. Number one, I'm ADHD, self-diagnosed, of course, but every sign points to it. And another disclaimer, I just got like a week ago, we were at several of you were there in Bend doing the ECS, and so exploring computer science. And so I did that. I was in the e-textiles. I had to turn around. I had a day, and then I had to take my son, who just got a job in Florida. We went to Orlando. I was tasked with finding him a job right when Hurricane Debbie made landfall. So it was crazy couple of days. I got in last night around 1 a.m. So I'm just going to go ahead and let you know if I'm a little scattered, that's my excuse, but really I'm just always a little scattered. No, so I've been teaching computer science since, oh gosh, I'd say my program officially began in the year 2007, 2008. I'm at Century High School in the Hillsborough School District. I've been there since 2005, and I actually got my start as an English teacher, English and social studies, but I always loved computers. And but I've been teaching Python since pretty much the beginning. So since I started teaching computer science. So that's a little bit about me. Now I've been fiddling around while I let T sort of give us a basic like I let him kind of talk for a bit because I was spending all my time working on this little trying to like customize my app over here. Is it showing here? Let me just my screen went small. You can see my screen, right? The workshop agenda there. Great.
Yep, we can
Just
see
want to
it.
make sure because I'm seeing my screen, but I'm not seeing it on the Zoom, so that freaked me out for a moment. But if I forget to change anything, let me know. So I was tweaking all this, trying to get it all ready, because I thought this is just I think this is the to me why I this is kind of like the reason why I really like PyQt6 is the customization of it. So I've been teaching and learning Python, for a long time, and I've always loved the visual aspect. I teach web design and game design in addition to programming, several levels of programming. And like many of you and many of us teaching CS, we kind of need to teach a lot of different. We need to just be open to teaching just about anything. And so in order to keep my program alive, I'll embed several levels of programming at once. And so, like this next year, I'm going to be teaching a web design one and a web design two at the same time, and then I'll be teaching like a programming three at the same time that I'm teaching programming two. So there's a lot of that kind of setup. And ever since I started teaching Python, coming from a web design point of view, I've always really liked graphical user interfaces. I liked the power I had over the design in web, but I noticed there's a lot of like apps with graphical user interfaces that we work with all the time, whether you're on a Mac or a PC. And yet I thought Python is such an easy language to work with. You can get things up and running really quickly. You can automate a lot of things. But the one thing that it seemed like was a problem is just trying to make a decent looking app. And if you know what I mean, maybe you've looked at some of the other GUI libraries, just call them GUI in case that's new to you, graphical user interface. And so I started with tkinter, which looked like it came right out of the year, 1995 or 2000 or somewhere way back in the day. And then I experimented with other graphical user interfaces, and some of them just didn't have good tutorials. Some of them were just very complex, and or just you couldn't do a lot with them. And I've been looking for this for a long time, and I finally landed on PyQt6. It's open source, it's free. I sent out the video. Hopefully, you've had a chance to take a look at that. But if you didn't, we're going to make this really open ended. So here's my agenda. And I also have a slideshow that's very minor, and I can add links and things to it, and I'll be sharing that in the chat window in just a moment. In fact, let me open up the chat so that I have it over on my other side so I can kind of see what's going on. Great, we've got some emails in here. I'll take a look at that at some point. So T already did all our introductions, so we kind of got all that out of the way. But in case you came in late or whatever and you haven't, just go ahead and write your name, organization, your role in the chat if you haven't done that yet. And then I've already begun to talk a little bit about PyQt6. And then I've got a Socrative set up that you can post your questions in there. And then I'm just going to take a look at just if there's anything in the chat window. And let's see, hold on a second. I'm trying to remember. P, who's my person that's going to help? Do I have someone who can help like feed me if there's a question in the chat that I might miss?
Yep, I got you.
Okay, great. Sean. Okay, great. So yeah, you let me know if there's anything I'm missing. Um, and so a lot of this is really going to depend on what you do, and what you're interested in, why you came here, because I want to make sure you get value out of this. So I'll tell you a little bit about sort of the background. Here's my slideshow that has sort of the agenda on here. I don't have much in here. I have this slide and then I have some links. So what I will do is I'll share links to in the chat, and then I can add more as we go. I'll post them on here, and then I'll try to make this available for everyone. So I'll start with the link to the slideshow. It's very minor. Our school district just changed a lot of policies, and so I might have to move this over to my own personal Gmail and make this something that you could edit, because I like the idea of letting participants be able to add some of, things that they have. For now, that's the
Set up
link
right
to this.
now, we don't have access to it, or at least
Of course you don't, because our school district loves to. Okay, give me just a moment while I do that real quick. And let me just hit escape on there. And I might have to just share that with my own. Okay. Yeah, that would be why. Anyone with the link. Okay.
Oh, and if you want us to edit, you're going to change that to that setting to edit if you wanted us to add to it.
Yes. Let's do that. Against what my district wants me to do. They never said we couldn't. They just warned us about it. Okay, so now you have access to it. You're totally welcome to like open up, create a new slide, put what stuff in there. So anyway, so now you got the links on there. Good. I see that anonymous capybara is on. Good. Squirrels. Okay, great. Looks like everyone's able to get there. So I sent out some of these links already. I'll just walk you through them. And then just let me know anything that you would like me to go over. Like I said, I tried different graphical user interfaces, and so this link right here, I think this has just been a great resource for me. When I get students working on this, what I do is I usually just go to the widgets page, and I can post a link to it. If you like, if you want to do that, I'll just do a direct link to PyQt6 widgets, and I'll just drop that onto the slideshow. If the share window would stop blocking all of my tabs. Let me see if I can I move that thing down below? Let's see if oh, it just pops up. There we go. Okay, let me just drop that in here. And then I'll just I'll show you the two links, widgets, and then I'll set layouts. And then I'll also kind of talk about like how I use it in the classroom. I think that would be very important for you to kind of see how that works. And I've had a couple, just like while I'm talking about this, I've had a couple people or one person, and I've known other people talk about the fact that it's really hard for school districts to be able to do like import a library in Python, or like things are blocked a lot. And so there's different ways that you can go about creating this. I'm going to just get this link to the layouts, and then I'll add that. And sorry, I keep going over here. Here we go. Okay. So I'll do kind of an overview of just give you a brief overview of Python GUIs and some of the code behind it. And I'm going to not start with the agenda here. I'm just going to go ahead and close that. But the nice thing here is if you go to my GitHub repository, let me push this through so you can kind of see what I just did here. I'm just going to do a Git branch. I'm pretty sure I'm on the main branch. If you've worked with Git, I definitely recommend you have, if the students are able to, I recommend that they get that because they can follow this tutorial or they can go get this repository and they can work with all of the examples. And I have a companion video series that goes with it. So let me just do this. Okay, push those changes through. All right. So if you want to kind of take a just like exploratory look here, what you could do is you can go click on the link to my GitHub repository. And from there, if you want to look, you can kind of follow along looking at the examples that we have. My recommendation, the way I set this up, is I have a main branch which has starter code. And the starter code is in the folder that's Guide to PyQt6. And if you want, I can link to any one of these. I have a folder for layouts, a folder for widgets. I apologize, my layouts, right now, a lot of these are not built out, and I'm still in the process of doing that. But I can walk you through any kind of layout if you want, and I have other examples I could pull in. But we have different starter code here. And so the main one would be the guide to PyQt6. Go to the folder here, and then I would look at widgets, and I would just probably just start with the basic app, and you can look at the code, and I'm going to walk through it on my VS Code. But if you kind of want to walk through it here, if you want to make, if you want to clone this, my recommendation is if you are comfortable with Git, you do the Git clone because as I continue with my video series, I'll be posting solutions and starter code for the layouts as well. So anyway, so I'm going to walk you through just some examples here, so you can kind of see it. So the first one, like I said, it'll be the basic. It's under the basic app, under the widgets folder. And my recommendation is if you want to see the final product, it's probably a better one. I would click where it says main, and I would choose solutions because the solutions has the kind of answer to the code and the challenges that I give. I make that available. It'll be available to my students, and I'm okay with that. So I'm going to switch to that branch on here. And then if you want me to, here, let me zoom in on my text so you can kind of see the code I'm doing just a little bit easier here. Oh, check out, excuse me. And then I'm going to pull, just make sure I got the up-to-date code. Yeah, there was a lot of code I had to add. Okay, so let me walk you through on my folder here. Like I said, we're in the Guide to PyQt6 widgets folder, basic app. And so I'm going to run it. I have to, yeah, I can go ahead and run it now. And so you can kind of see, so we have a basic app here, pretty plain, right? This is like the default setting. But as you can see here, there's labels and I got text input here. I have a button that when you click it, it welcomes the user. If I hit clear, it clears it. And so I'll walk you through sort of just the basics of it. It is a library you have to import, which is why in my video that I sent out, I showed you can do this with poetry. You could, if you're familiar and you're comfortable with Python, you could do a pip install PyQt6. And I even discovered, I tried this out the other day, you could even download the file and you could extract it into a folder and use it, and you wouldn't need administrator privileges to install the library. My video kind of covered that. If you want me to go over that, I can do that. But you have to import the files here. I just posted a video, by the way, that talks about object-oriented programming because I know we're doing object-oriented programming here. So this is a great follow-up to an introduction to object-oriented programming. And my video, I have like a what is it, 25-minute video that walks through all the main concepts of object-oriented. But you could, and what I do is I'll have students start with just starter code, and I get them to the part where they can just paste it, run it, and if they get their app running, I'm able to do that. I usually do this later. I do a year-long class. My students who are in a level one programming class who are wanting the extra are completely capable of doing this project. So this could be a level two type. It could be an extension for the tag students or the students that are just highly motivated and want to go above and beyond. And so I just thought I'd give you that. So anything you want to have in your app needs to be imported first. So, and you gotta have to get used to the naming of everything. Everything begins with the Q. So Q application. Some of these you just need for any kind of app. But ones that you're going to import and use in the app, and I'm just going to pop this open here so you can see it. Is so Q label is the text you see. It's static. You can code it to change it. So you can modify the text. You can grab the text from a label and use it if you want to. So I've had some, this is like if you click greet the user, notice that label changes. So we can program it, we can do stuff with it. So those are the labels. Q line edit is the text edit. So it's good for asking for a name, favorite song. Students sometimes try to use that for numbers. The problem with that is people can type anything in and it's really easy to crash the program. So there's another widget for that. I'll go over that in just a moment. So there's the Q line edit. Q push button is for the button. Excuse me. And then you have these layouts. You have a Q H box layout and a Q V box layout. So H is for horizontal, V is for vertical. Sorry, I keep clicking and then I keep popping that up. Um, so the way it works, and this is very similar in a lot of graphical user interfaces, is I know this is really similar, by the way, to Android development. The nice thing about this is Android, you need Android Studio. It's this big, giant, bloated code. And you could probably do it without it, but this is just so much easier to get into. Everything is usually you start with a vertical box layout and you just add stuff to it and you just put it from top to bottom. So this is kind of the anatomy of it. So basic app, simple greeting app is the first thing we add to the vertical box. And then if you want things side by side, you could use an H box layout. And let me do this a little differently. Hold on a second. By the way, another weird little thing, if you're working with VS Code and you run it using the run, if you notice, I hit run and it doesn't pop up. But if I close this, and I close this again. Every time I hit run, it was just waiting for me to close it before I could run it. So that's a little gotcha that you'd have to close it, run it again, or I like to just run in debug mode, which you click the little bug with the run here, click run and debug. You do have to select Python debugger. And then once you run that, now what you can do is let's say I click on something here and it goes away. I just hit refresh and it just pops it right back up again. I'm just going to move this over a little bit so I don't have to keep popping it up. And so again, I'm just kind of walking you through kind of the main thing here. At some point, I'll show you kind of the folder structure, but let's just keep talking about the apps themselves. And I'll walk you through the code. Sorry, I'm going to hide that for a second. Hide that. There we go. So there's my app. By the way, you can resize it, but you can also make it a fixed size. You can code it to resize on the click of a button if you want. It's using resize for that. Okay, so these are all the import statements. And then it's, like I said, it's object oriented. So this is like, I like to call it a lot of people talk about a class being a blueprint. I kind of like factory a little bit better because this is the factory that makes the main window. And basically, we're talking on for some of you, if it's obvious, sorry if it's plain obvious, but I'm trying to hit the middle road here. So basically, what we're saying here is we're using inheritance. We're saying we're going to make a main window. We're going to take the Q main window and we're going to customize it. Okay, so it's object oriented in Python. when we need to construct or build our window, we need the constructor method, also known as the initializer. So we have init, self, and then this here runs the QMain window. So that creates it. So everything else after here is building out our app. And definitely, if you're not familiar with Python, anytime you want access to something, let's say you want to program something to change, you usually have a self and a dot in front of it. Okay. So I'll just walk you through some of this. You can kind of guess here. Basic app. Notice it says basic app at the top of the window here. It's the window title that appears up there. If you looked at my title screen, you'll see that we customized it. We changed the font, we changed the look and feel. There's a lot you can do with that. Content margin is just setting margin around your content. So I believe it's top, right, bottom, left. I could be wrong on there. You can fiddle with a number, like I could put 0 here, and I could rerun it, and you can see what's changed. And it looks like it's probably the left-hand side, so it looks like we're starting on the left. Okay, excuse me. There we go. Just rerun it. Okay, so I'll just kind of walk you through. Everything here is objects. So we've got layout, and this layout becomes the main layout, and it's a vertical box layout. So this is just constructing it. I like to break up my code so it's not too stretches out too far to the side. So I usually create variables for things like titles, right? So it's just a string, and then we're creating a title label, Q label. And when you create your label, you can either give it a label as a variable, you can give it as quotes, you can also leave it blank. And then you could, from there, you could put title label dot set text. Oops. And then I could put title there. So there's different ways around here. This is good to kind of like, and I'm just kind of like hitting some of these ideas here. So there's different ways. So these labels have a lot of methods built into them. Okay, so there's different ways we can do it. And we have a name layout. I like to name my variables with like what is it? And then sorry, like this is the title, and then it's a label so that it's easier to read later. So name underscore label, and I use snake case because it's Python, so you use underscores all lowercase. These are objects, so if people wonder why is that not snake case? Well, it's because this is the way you use the camel case when you're creating objects. So, okay, so there we're creating a label. We make a name input. Now, because we want to get the user's name, we need to put self.name input. We have to have that self, all right? And to set placeholder text where it says your name, gives a little hint. That does not get captured when you grab it. And then you'll notice we have a layout here, and then our layouts, we can add widgets to layouts. So we could put the name label, self-name input, and you'll notice they are side by side because it's a horizontal box. So we'll move down. You can kind of get the feel. So then we do the same thing for the layout for the song, favorite song. And then we go down here, and here's buttons. So it's good to know how buttons work. There's the greet button. It's a Q push button. And if you put text in there, that's what it says on the button. You can always add that later, or you can change what the button says. Now, to get a button to work, you have a thing called a signal and a slot. Okay. The signal is like an event. So this is event-driven programming. And so buttons could be clicked. So when the button is clicked, we want to connect that to a method. In this case, we're going to name it and we're going to code it. So we called it greet user, self.greetUser. And then we'll jump down there. Notice the self again. This is because it's object oriented. And again, students sometimes are like, just show me the code, and they work around. And then eventually they're like, okay, why am I doing this? Or why doesn't this work? And usually it's because they forgot to put self dot in front of it. Or when they're asking, why is this here? I tell the students, anything you want to have access to after you build your app, you have to have a self dot in front of it. Okay, so there's where we have a greet button. And then let's take a look at the greet user. And then you can kind of see clear button is very similar. And of course, you have access to the code. Usually, I like to add all my final layouts and widgets all together at the same time, unless it's one that I'm embedding, like a horizontal one you saw earlier, the your name and the favorite song. But then we can take a layout, that layout, we can add another layout to it. So we can nest layouts within layouts. And then we jump down. I'll go over this code in just a moment, but there's the greet user code. So usually I create a variable and then I set it to, the input and every widget. So in this case, this is a text queue line edit, right? If I hover, it tells me it's a queue line edit. Um, to get the text from it, it's just dot text. But you can't do that on every widget. Every widget has its own way of getting the input. So that's another thing that students have difficulty with. I like to use this is called an F string. If you're not familiar with that, it allows you in Python to just insert a variable wherever you want it inside of your string. And so we create a greeting, and then we get the song title, and then I decided to have a little extra code. Hey, if there's something like the user typed something for the song title, we add to the greeting. Oh, you like that? That's awesome. Me too. Just add a little greeting there. And at the very end, we set our text. And then that's what the greet user does. You'll notice when click, we click self.greetUser. So self.greetUser means this is something that our window can do. It's called greet user. You'll notice when you do this as a slot, you do not put parentheses around greet user or it does not work. So you put the name of the method without the parentheses inside. PyQt6 knows what to do with it. And there's that, and there's my code for clearing. Okay, so that's kind of your overview. And I said I was going to go over just a couple more things here at the end. So it is very common. All my apps generally end this way. You have layout.add stretch. What that does is it pushes everything to the top. So if you notice when I scroll down here, everything's still at the top. If I didn't add the stretch, everything would be centered evenly. So I can show you what that looks like. Let's run it again. And now when I stretch it out, everything stretches out with it. And I don't like that. Most people don't. So unless you want to have a fixed size, I just don't recommend it. So I always add that. Anyway, so that's that. And then we create a widget. This is going to be, you always have to have a central widget. So every window needs a widget. And that widget, I just created it here. And then the widget, I set the layout to be the layout. And then down here, we set it as the central widget. And when that's done running, it just sits there. Oh, yeah. Randy, if someone can do that, that would be great. Okay, I hope I'm not going too much in the weeds, but I figured it's good to kind of walk you through it. And then I always like to explain everything of what I do here. If you've ever seen this and ever wondered what's up with this if name is equal to main, what that does is you don't have to have that. You could run all of this without it. You would just not tab it. You wouldn't have this here, and it would run it. The reason why we do this is we're saying here, okay, if we're running it directly right from the file, we want this code to run. If we want to import our main window into another file, and we don't want this to run, but we just want to have it available, then this gets ignored. And I could go into that a little more detail if someone wanted to. Um, but like I said, you could just run it, everything here. What happens is eventually, when apps get more complex, you'll find that in a lot of software projects, you want to separate your windows. And this becomes like a much more advanced topic a little bit later on. Actually, I'll just go ahead and show you while I'm just talking about it real quick, is on the Python GUIs, there's PyQt6 layouts, and there's a really cool layout that a lot of students want to figure out how to do, and they're willing to put the work in. It's the stacked layout. So what you can do is you can put all of your windows one on top of another. And then you can, on a click of a button, go to another window. So a lot of times, you see apps like that, right? You open an app for the first time and it takes you to like a tutorial screen, or you need to create your account. And then what you do, you're out of that screen and you're on another screen. You didn't have to go to another one and navigate to it. It's some kind of a stacked widget like that. And so, and here, you're going to have windows and it gets kind of complex. So we have these, they create tabs and things like that, but a lot of times you may find it's best, and I'm trying to see if I have, no, I don't see it on there. I'll just go back to this right here, is each one of these could be its own file. And you might want to import it. And the reason why you do that is your code gets really long, really fast if you try to put everything on one file. So that's just my little pro tip there for building apps. That's definitely an advanced skill students get can get lost in that, but some like that challenge, and so I think it's good to have that available as an option. Okay, so that's the basic app. All right, so let me run it one more time. Let me just kind of show you a couple other widgets that we have available, and I'm in the solutions branch. I'm just going to close this, and I'm going to just kind of walk you through the folder here that you got. So here's one where we added style. So if you're interested in me going over that, I can go over that. I'm just going to run it here. And as you notice, now we've got colors, we got different fonts. These fonts that I'm using here and the one that was on that title screen, those are Google fonts. And you can bring in your own fonts and have those displaying. And so if you're interested in that, this is a tip calculator. So a student of mine made a tip calculator. I cleaned up the color and design because I'm kind of I get a little particular. I like things to look right. I hate Comic Sans, and so I'm kind of a. This is my designer heart. I get really like like I'm shocked. It's great to see students do it and explore it. I love that. But when it comes to me showing something, I want it to look nice. I want to have good colors. I want to have some negative space. So, but I like this because you can do this, and I'll show you some of these. But here's another cool little widget here. This is a Q double spin box. And a Q double spin box is for floating point numbers. And this is great for validation. So let's say you don't, you want to get a floating point number. Maybe it's money amount. So that's why I think a tip calculator is perfect for this, right? And you get a bill, and that bill is going to be $50.64. All right, well, it's nice here because you can just go in here and you can just type it in. Let's try this. Oops, I'm going to hit delete. 54. And let's go back here. I'll just put 05. All right. Now, what's cool about this is that, so this is for, floating point numbers. You'll notice there's a dollar sign here. So you can add symbols in front. Doesn't affect the fact that we can get a number out of it. So that's really nice. And if you look here, this is a Q spin box. And a Q spin box by default just is integers. Okay. You can set the minimum, you can set the maximum amount. By default, I think the minimum is 0 and the maximum is 100. Or here, you're kind of limited. You're probably going to want to set the maximum to a higher number. But what's cool about this is not only can you do that, but watch this. If I go up, you can tell it to increment by 5. So there's a lot of cool built-in features that are worth knowing. And I'm going to click calculate. And there we go. You entered 54.05 for the amount and 15% for your tip. You should therefore tip $8.11, and the total bill should come to $62.16. And then you can clear it out and start over. You'll notice you can put that here. So if you want me to go over that, I can walk you through like just how you set those up. I'll show you what it looks like in the code because I think it's pretty awesome. So there's the Q double spin box. Okay, so we create it here. And I have a little label there, and I stick it in a QH box layout. And then you can, on that input, you can set the range, low and high. You can set a prefix, you can set a suffix. So the prefix is just a string that shows before it. Suffix will be a string that shows after it. And then there's this set single step. So what you could do is if they're doing the up and down, it will increase or decrease by 50 cents, but you don't have to. You could leave that blank and then you add it as a widget. Now you have to put self dot in front of it because you're going to want to grab that information. And here's the spin box. And in here, it sets single step. That's why you increase or decrease by 5%. And we set the suffix and we add the widgets here. So you got, and notice I try to comment it very well so you can kind of see where everything is. And then let's look at the code on the button because I think it's kind of nice because there's some little features here. On calculate, we get the self dot amount input dot value. That's it. That gives you the value as a floating point number. And then we can use round to round it to 2 decimal points. I don't know why I have a comma there. I'll get rid of that. I'll fix that later. And then here's tip, self.tip amount, and it's dot value. Notice this time it's not text, it's dot value. So each widget, you're going to have to look and know what they are. My tutorial will have all of that, and my videos have all of that, but you can just look at the solution code and figure it out for yourself. Okay. So we get the value here, and then we have the tip amount, and then here we do a little fun little math. My solution doesn't have that. I encourage students to figure out how do they figure it out. And then we round it, and then we get the total amount equals dollar amount plus tip amount, total amount. So it says all of our grabs all the input, does all the calculation. And here's where I get a little fancy. Where if you put, like using that F string, if you put a colon and a dot to F, then what that will be is it will be a floating point rounded to 2 decimal points. And I found that you want to do it that way because if you don't, and it's rounded to an even number, it will just truncate and you won't have the 0.00. You might, and so it's definitely worth doing that because that's what you want to see in money. So I like to have examples that you can look at. And and then we just set the text at the end after we build out all of our output. So you can take a look at that. Okay, so that's kind of that's just an introduction. If you want to look here, let's go to check boxes, I believe. Nope. Combo boxes. One more. Let's just run this so you can see it. I gotta do the debugger again. Combo box. You can add icons in front of it. My solutions will show you how to do that. So that's like the drop down. Oops, I did expand all. Let's do collapse all. There we go. Notice there's another font there. Click me. You selected collapse all for your option, or collapse all for your option. Okay, so you can, if you want to look at the code for combo boxes, that's all in place. And I think at this point we've gone, yeah, we've gone. I think that's about what I was thinking we'd do. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how I do it with my students. And unless there's something anyone's got, oh yeah, I was gonna, let's just put anything you've got a question about, let's just put it in the chat. I was gonna do it in the Socrative, but I think maybe that's the better way to do that. Uh, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close this. And I want to just walk you through some of the tools I do for my students. So I like to use PyQt6, get them just exploring. Hold on a second. Still have a window open. Let's go ahead and close that. And I'm going to go just show you some of the tools that I have. I didn't get this loaded up, so it's going to take me a moment. Think about any questions that you may have. And let's see if I can do this. I'm just going to try Google Docs to begin with. Problem is I probably have so many student examples. Yeah. And I'm going to just do a search here. PyQt6, written documentation. Nope, that's a different. I have all these. I don't know if. Oh, by the way, that right there is proof I'm ADHD because I got these half-started documents everywhere. Let's try a Py. Let's try GUI. GUI testing table. Okay, so here's let me start with the design. I give them a Google Doc. I have to go back a little bit. Design document template. Nope, that's for my senior project class. Different one there. Think of questions you got. What would you like to have me talk about, go over, or around testing? So I have to get past all the testing tables. Okay, here we go. Visual design planning worksheet. And this is actually a senior project, so this is probably not the one I'm looking at. Let me just, yeah, that's a slightly different one. Yeah, okay. This is a different senior project, so sorry. If I had more time, I'd have those all ready to go. Oh, calculator app. Let me just do that. Setup.
Chris, as you're looking through, we did get a
Sure.
question in the chat from Doug. He said he was curious to hear about various projects that you have students do using
It's
PyQt6. The tip calculator is clearly one, but what are some other examples?
yes. So I'll show you. I'll just do uh GUI calculator, app design template. Is this the one? Yeah. Okay, so I do GUI calculator app design. And so I've got the design template. So we have app description, what does your app do? What problem does it solve? Who would benefit from this app? Algorithm or formula, what formulas are used to calculate the output, or what is the algorithm for processing the information? And then they do like a mock-up. I think this might not be the one. I have a more clean version of it, but I usually have them start by just thinking of types of calculators, and with that way you get just a few inputs. They have to think about formulas and put that together. I mean, that's a similar template. I'll see if I can. This will definitely. I don't want to eat up too much time, so I'll try to bring those together and just have a source of some of those we can see. I think maybe going to my Google Classroom will be the better way to do this. Of course, it's all been archived, so GUI calculator. Another one I've done, and for the more advanced student, is I teach them how to tap into an API. So let's just go ahead and take a look at one of my programming. Just go to the archive classes. Let's make sure it's programming 3. No, not that one. So if you know about like free and public APIs, and here's a great list of free APIs. I don't know if this is the one. Yeah. So like animals, for example, and dogs. And so depending on what you do, yeah. So I show them how they can in Python make a call to a link like here, like random image, and it returns a JSON object, which is identical to the Python dictionary formatting. Sometimes you'll get a list with like it'll be in the form of like a list with dictionary objects inside. But what's nice then is that this is one of those where when you get to the part where you're talking about dictionaries, they're like hash maps or JSON objects. So when you get there, I have some sample code that walks them through how to do it. And their job is to find some, combination or something, preferably one where, they like this is actually a little bit harder because to display an image, usually the best way to display an image is using there's a web-based widget. It's a web view engine or Q web engine view. There's like two different ones here. Anyways, I have some sample code that I could show you on that one. So that would be another one. And then usually once they've kind of done the calculator, then they come up with it's funny, they come up with all kinds of wacky ideas and ones that are really hard to do. Like one wanted to do a mileage program, like what's the mileage from one city to another? And so they had kind of an app like that. So usually that's what I do. I give them like a calculator where I kind of walk them through, and then they come up with other ideas of things that they want to do and figure out. I do have students that are interested in Matplot library and doing like data uh, visualization. And then I'll just put PyQt6, um, Matplot library. And on Python GUIs, there you go. I had students that were very interested in doing some of that with the PyQt6 plotting. And so that those are, again, those are like the advanced students that want to do it. But I will walk all the students through going through a calculator. And then I usually have one where it's like, okay, and if you're running out of ideas, so like usually they'll do like I'll usually do a walkthrough of the wind chill calculator or maybe a body mass index calculator, something like that, that has some inputs and has some formulas for it. So Randy asks, are my students using VS Code and GitHub for the programming platforms? They absolutely are. I really like VS Code. Mostly what I like about it is it supports lots of other extensions. And once students have that available, once they get comfortable with Git, they can do Git commands in the terminal, or they can do it right here. Whoa, source control. This VS Code must have just added this visualization. Is that just wild? I've not seen that. That's new. Must have done an update. But you have changes, right? So you can stage your changes, and then you can write your commit message and you can click commit. So it's a more graphical one they can use. This is going to probably drive some of the students crazy. They'll be like, what is this? Maybe they'll be able to use it. I don't know. All right. Well, anyway, so yeah, they do that. And so it's a lot of being patient, walking them through after they're more comfortable using. I try to introduce Git commands. One of the things I do, in fact, I could do this with one of my classrooms. And let's just go to programming. This is probably programming one. Here we go. And so usually what I'll do is oh, look, I have a sample of a wind chill calculator, and I posted a little video of how to do that. And then I have under classwork, I have a daily slides. In my daily slides, where did that go? Did I not put it in there? Oh, I need to go to game design. Maybe I don't do that with programming. I should next year. Oh no, that's course outcomes. Sorry. Got to go back to. I just wanted to show you. Well, I can just tell you. I post a list of the Git commands and on the an everyday slideshow. I do it for game design because game design it's really necessary to use Git because you're dealing with multiple folders. I do Game Maker Studio. There we go. Git commands. So I go in the slideshow. So I just post this, have a list of plans for the day, essential questions for when they do walkthroughs. There they go. Git commands, git status, git add star, git commit dash M. And it's on multiple screens. So I usually point to it. Yeah. And okay, so the other thing, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Randy, about using VS Code and GitHub for teaching students a good programming workflow. Yes. So let's talk a little bit about that folder because I always know like one of the issues that I hear from a lot of people is that if you look here, this is it's a lot of files, right? And I think I should probably show you I'm going to open up a different window and open up a different app. Let's see if I can find one of my more. I'll show you one that has the API in it if I can find that one. It's I'm not finding it. Okay, let me just open folder. Document of GitHub projects. Oh, I probably don't have it here. Well, let's find one that I do have. Okay, well, sure. I'll show you the icon generator. Oh, there was the wind chill calculator. Here we go. Let's go back there. Interesting that you'll probably see if you look at this. And by the way, you can look at this is a GitHub repo that you could find on my GitHub repo if you want. I can show you the link to it. So let's walk you through the folder structure. And this is a way to help students kind of um, um, see how a modern app design, once you get into making Swift apps or um, Android apps or video game projects in Unity and things, they're built up with a lot of folders. And one of the things I like to teach is I got our district. I can't believe. Don't tell them that I can't believe this, but they've agreed to let me have poetry. And poetry is cool because you can create a project. Here, I'll show you real quick. I'm just going to open up a new project in programming. I'm just going to right click and open in terminal. If I can find where terminal went, it's probably behind this folder or here or here. Dang, where'd that go? Behind the chat. Zoom in. Okay, I like terminal. If you haven't played with this, it's kind of cool because you can add extra tabs. All right, so I'm going to type ls. Sorry. Okay, dir. All right, got all of my folders. Okay, so do a little thing here. I'm gonna just put poetry, new, and let's call this modern dash app. So poetry it manages libraries, but it also manages projects. So when I hit enter, it creates a package. And I love this because this is one of those where I never remember, like, what's the best way to set up a complex project? All right, so I've got that open now. So let's just open up the folder and take a look at that. Modern app, there it is. And with it, oops, sorry, let me just get back here and let's make this nice and big. Do our view, extra large, well, maybe not, medium icons. All right, so you have one folder that notice you usually name it with a dash if it's 2 words, and then here they use an underscore, and it creates a test folder, and it creates this file called a toml, and it creates a README file. They're all in place, and you can start building from there. And then this way you can kind of teach them how to set up folders. Some of you may have, and if you've come from a different background, you might have a folder called SRC. That would be like it. It has an init file. One gotcha that you need to be ready for is that students many times start coding in the init. And this is designed to be left alone. Um, anyway, so that's kind of, it creates that folder here. And then if you're in poetry, I'm just going to do this now in Git Bash because I like Git Bash. It's cool because if you have any of these kind of terminal type windows, you can run commands in there. So I could put poetry um, add. So I'm going to add a library. I'm going to type PyQt6. And then it creates a virtual environment and it installs what I need. And the cool thing is it's installing it not in that folder, it's installing it on like app data somewhere on another folder. And so you don't have to install it on the whole system to have it. So I kind of like that. My tutorials kind of go over this. Wow, this is really slow. Okay, so anyway, I'll let it do that, and I'll show you the other app I was going to talk about. Keep those questions coming, by the way. Okay, so the wind chill calculator app, let's look at it. I like to also, I start, if you're familiar with the MVC model view controller, I start kind of introducing that. So I might have them create let me show you this actually real quick. Is this the demo? Let me just see if this is the one I'm thinking of. Oh no, this is one where I just created a demo so they can see what things look like. Because one of the things I have students do is I'll have students explore like the different kinds of widgets and see what they look like, but then see how they can be designed a little differently. And once they see what it's capable of, then I ask them, think of their project idea and start going through the design process. And I have them create a mock-up for it. I like Canva now for creating mock-ups. It's my favorite. Students still use Microsoft Paint. and then some will try to use some other tool, and you can always tell what tool they use based on what the mock-up looks like. I think it's good to hand draw it first, honestly, and take a picture of it and show that. But once they kind of know what kind of widgets they have, then they have to kind of figure out what would be the best widget for what they're trying to do. So if they're going to have a to some location in the state of Oregon, they might have a drop down of the different places they want to go to, and maybe they select it and it'll say how far it is. Or maybe they want a little checkbox, right? And you can do radio buttons where you can only select one, or you can do one you can select multiple. I'm going to say get the stuff. Look at that. You can even format your output. This is called a text Q. Gosh, I forget the name of this Q window, but let's look at it. There's Q line edit, Q text edit. That's the one. Q text edit. You can actually format your text. So there's lots of little things they can do on there. And then, so that was just a demo I showed them. And then here's the wind chill. And one of the things here is here's where you're actually importing a file that does the calculation for you. So I'll run it. Well, let's do debug mode. The reason why debug mode's nice is that it's nice because you can make a change and you can test your change right away. So wind chill calculator, kind of ugly. I know I would design it differently. Try to do it again. There we go. This is how the size of the window also changed when you did it. So the calculation there is I imported the file called controller. And then when I want to do some work with it, I put controller dot, and here it's controller dot get wind chill. And I pass it to arguments. And then let's open up controller. There's the get wind chill function. Remember how I did the if name is equal to main? When you import a file, anything in the global scope would get run unless you stick it in the if name is equal to main. Then it doesn't get run. But if I don't, that's not there, it does it. Okay, more questions. Tons of resource. Yes, step out. Okay, that's fine. Thank you, Sean, and good luck with that. Okay. Uh, what other questions? Comments, points of interest. The tip calculator, that was not mine. That wasn't like I'm having you do a tip calculator. That was this generic calculator. And I went through, I believe I did the wind chill calculator. And I had one student say that first project is going to do the wind chill calculator. I'm like, I'm doing this. And you can only get a C, no better, unless you do a different kind of calculator. That student still did a still did a wind chill calculator, but okay. Wanted the C, got the C. Okay. But everyone else did different ones. And so the tip calculator was from another student. And the design looked totally different. The buttons were all round because that's how he designed it. So then when he coded it, he's like, okay, I said, it doesn't look like your design. So you're going to need to refactor and learn how to do some of the. So he worked through it. He got it to work. So yeah, a lot of different projects students have done. And I could take a look at. I might have actually downloaded some of these, unless I cleared them all out. Anyway, so what else would you like to do? We got time. Um, Anything you'd like me to walk you through, or you want to just? Hey, and by the way, if you're here and you're just like messing around, that's great. I love it. So you can just mess around with this stuff. Um, I could go over stuff related to Git. I could try to find more of those examples. I could find if I don't hear from anyone, I think what I'll do is go look at some of the examples students did. And by the way, explore this. Oh, and I'll show you one thing. And this is how I learned it. Okay, I like to code in my free time. It's like, to me, coding is like those of you who love to read a novel, those of you who like to go garden. I code. I do this. If I wasn't teaching, I'd still be coding. I can't wait to retire and code and have more coding time. Okay. This thing, icon generator, check this out. Here's the other thing I love about VS Code. I can double click on this file. Let's go ahead and get extra large icons. This one, icon generator.code.workspace, double click it, bam, I'm right there in the window. You got to check this out. I'm gonna run app. This actually began. I was doing a demo with my hold on. So suddenly it says module not found error. Okay, the reason why that's not found is this is not set up yet. I have to do poetry. I'm going to do poetry update. So what poetry update does is I have some libraries I installed. And by the way, if you look at pyproject.toml called the TOML file, has a list of dependencies. So in order to do this, I need Python. Uh, I want people to use at least 3.9 or higher. So that's at greater than, I think that's, oh, it's just greater than. Well, we'll see what it is. We'll see how it works. And then requests is for making API calls. There's PyQt6. File clerk is actually a library I created. It's open source. You could import it on your own. And then PyQt6 web engine. And you have all this here. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to type poetry update. If any of those have an update, it will download those. See, downloading the packages. I got to let it do it. That will also create the Python shell, or the virtual environment, excuse me. The virtual environment. It's been a while since I've done update on here. While that's doing it, I'm going to click on app and we're going to scroll up to the top. So one of the things I want to see is it ready to run? So I think now that I did the poetry, we're at 37%. So this might take a while. Okay, I'll come back to that. Let's go to my student projects. If you want me to go over any of these layouts, because they're not on here, I could.
Chris, there's a chat question from Stephanie regarding,
Sure.
well, you can read it.
Yep, I can. I open it on the side, but I'm not
Okay.
always reading it. So thanks for calling that out. So for your senior advanced classes, are students still using Python for their apps and projects, or are they using other app development languages and platforms? Okay, so we're all PCs, so I leave Swift alone. All right. When I had a Mac, I learned to do a very basic app but I know how it kind of works. Android used to do Android. It is so bloated, so big. And then if you don't use Android Studio, it's way more complex. So I don't. But here's the thing. In our computers, we use VS Code, and all of them know that. And then for my game design students, they do Unity and they do Game Maker Studio, but there's always the advanced student that wants to do something else. Okay, also Java. The problem with Java is that in order to do a graphical window in Java, there's a couple different libraries that you could use. I like Java Effects, but Java Effects is really rough to work with. You got to set up, setting up the environment is a lot of extra setup. So it's really for the student that just wants to do it. But I also have Visual Studio Community, which is like the big Microsoft one, and it allows students to do C++. And so I have like one or two students every few years that are dying to use it because they have familiar with it. Maybe they had a coding camp or they learned it on their own. And so I'll have some seniors that are able to do that, and they do it with the Visual Studio Community Edition. So I had a student actually work with OpenGL and just do really advanced stuff. But the Python and the PyQt6, that is the easy button. So what I've done is I have a pure senior project class, and program level 1, I introduce them to the concept of PyQt6. I try to get as many students on board doing the calculator app. Then we come back to it again the next year in the next level where I do this again, where I do with the APIs and bringing that into the mix. Because I feel like if they can get the APIs and they can figure out the PyQt6, you can do a lot of really interesting apps with that. And now I'm going to probably bring in that matplot library for some students and figure that out. Maybe have students create tutorials for that. And then what happens is I did a backwards mapping. I figured, okay, I got these seniors and they're just not prepared, right? It's like, yeah, they just only do it in command line. They're just doing Python scripts and there's nothing visual about it. That becomes a problem because then there's not much, it's harder to showcase. I want them to kind of learn some of the design techniques and do some visual design. So that's what I do is I tell students, if you're not sure what to do and you took my programming class, do a PyQt6, and I walk them through what are they interested in, what they're passionate about, what could they use projects for. So so the students that did the PyQt6, one student did a recipe app. So it was kind of like one where you could store recipes, you could find recipes again, you could edit them. I had another student do sort of a note-taking app. I've had a student do a flashcard type app, had students do one that was, I said note-taking app, right? So I'm trying to think of something. Oh yeah, the one was taking like data science, that class, and wanted to do something, or maybe it was a math class and wanted to do some visualization. So they brought that into PyQt6 and figured out how to do that. Um, so I use the Python because it kind of goes back a long way. When I first started teaching programming, it was literally I learned on I learned in the 80s, okay? So I learned basic, right? That was my first language. I hated that language because it just was so like, you had to number your lines and you had go-to statements to go to the line. And then if you had to refactor, you had to number everything. Or I quickly was like, every line in my code was like line 10, line 20, line 30. So I could insert like 9 lines. And then even then I had to like, so it was just like, this is just cumbersome. So then I went into web design. I loved web design. I was doing a lot of stuff with uh, PHP, with JavaScript. So I was learning other languages. And I was like, I didn't, okay, just to give you history, I started teaching programming, like I said, at like 2000. I actually started teaching the web design in the 2005, 2006 year. During that year, the principal said, what do you think about teaching programming? I was like, yes, that's what I really want to do because I want to make sure I get a program where I don't have to worry about like getting pulled to teach English or some other topic. So I went with, okay, what programming language am I going to do? So I spent that summer just going through the boards and I wanted something that students could learn that would be something easy to kind of get into. And I ended up landing on Python because it felt very intuitive for me. And then data science started getting popular and just people just kept building libraries for it. I really liked that. Early on, though, I had advisors saying, they really should learn like a compiling language. And so we did for one year, I did C sharp, another couple of years, I started doing Java, and I decided to land on Java because, APCS, the APCS exam is Java. And so I've been doing Java for a while. And then Android Studio started getting popular, and that was Java. So usually I do Java and Python. And so that's kind of how I got with those. I found students that took my Python, they only learned Python and they went to college. And like, I had several students basically do the MECOP program. They thanked me for what they got. The experience they got in Python was all they needed. And they were like running computer labs at the college at OSU. They were graduating debt free. I mean, like, so I was like, I feel like, okay, because sometimes I always feel like I have to defend Python. I don't know why, but I still feel that way. I think Python is a bit of that imposter syndrome for programming language. Some people still, because they're always like, oh, it's slow. It's like, sure, if your whole goal is to program, you know, you want to do science trajectory calculations in the solar system, you want to do that? Great. Yeah, it's slow. Don't use Python for that, right? But now they got pandas, they got other libraries that are speeding it up. From Microsoft are working on trying to speed it up. But ultimately, it's a nice one to get into. And I got a lot of experience. I go to PyCon. I like to do developer sprints so that I work on open source projects. And it was a wonderful experience working in the wild, right? It's kind of crazy. All right, so we have a thank you. You had some templates you showed us briefly. Um, with templates you had for students as they were designing their projects. Could you share a couple of those with us? Like share the Google Docs, maybe an intro one and a senior project level one. Okay. All right, let me go get those. Anything else? Okay. T, if you want to like keep everyone busy while I'm trying to
Yeah,
pull
and
these up. I think
let
the
me
best
keep
thing is to go
let
to
me
my archive.
yeah, let me keep everybody busy and say, Chris, you're a cheerleader for Python, but no apologies. You
Yeah.
know, and you're right. I also hear feedback that those who blow out Java, or excuse me, Python in good order and don't take the AP classes and do just fine. I also want you to address over kind of plug in the spaces here about what you do about FERPA, um, meeting FERPA standards and restrictions. Does your district or your building, and for all the software that you use, and just you all on this call could weigh in. I know that Sherwood is a stickler about FERPA and meeting FERPA, regulations, and we had to throw away some stuff that we love to use because the company didn't want to meet FERPA standards. So anyway, that's the one I'll throw out there. Um, People can weigh in on that, but yeah, that I know that compilers that I did use, I had to uh, you know, move to something else because we were restricted in our district. Anybody else facing that or found workarounds?
I'm kind of interested in that, and I know like the stuff I'm talking about here, that wouldn't be a FERPA COPPA because they're not collecting anything from anyone. The API could be one of those areas. And I will also say, just as while we're talking about it, the if you notice, we talked about having it be a JSON object. I'm going to start making more and more encourage students to down when they get that API to store that because sometimes those will come and go and they'll just be gone, right? So you could make the API call, grab the data as a dictionary, and then just save it as a JSON file. And then you could give that to the students. Like you could do it on your own, or they could get it on their own, or students could find it, bring it in, and they could just work with it instead of making that call. So that would be one of the workarounds I do. And so Unity is another one of those. We had a huge, big issue with that. We finally got them to figure out how to download just a copy of Unity without connecting to the Unity hub. Because the problem with Unity is the Unity store, and they collect all kinds of data, and they don't like that. I'm going to go look for the app stuff here. I'm just going to apologize because it's like you always kind of like feel uncomfortable sharing stuff because it's ugly, right? The stuff I'm doing, I keep going, I got to make that look better. I got to do this better next time. And so I'm just going to flat out be kind of apologetic here. So there's the final project. So I'm going to walk you through these and I'll make these available too and I'll just link to them. I'm gonna have to also use my Gmail account probably because like I said, district makes it harder and harder to share with other people. So the calculator app mockup and design. So I'm almost there. Okay, so that was the second semester. So I'm dialing it in. I'm almost there. Okay. Calculator app mockup and design. Looks like I didn't assign it to all my students. I assigned it to 13. 12 of them did it. One of them did not because, like I said, I use it for the advanced students. So let's take a look at that. Let's view instructions. Okay, very wordy. I apologize. Select a calculator app ID or an app that would receive one or more inputs from a user, process that information, requirements. So I have all this detail on here. You know what? I know what I can do. I could share the Google Classroom, or I could share these files here. So we use a 4-point scale. And so I break it down. So I have inputs and their data types. There needs to be at least one input with the correct data. So I want them to know what's the right data type for that input. Um, and then I want them to name the variable, and I want it to be a well-written name. We have UI widgets. So each UI control needs to be correctly identified. Variable names you need to use standard naming convention for the programming language. Anyway, so I've got that as the breakdown, and I'll bring this over. I believe, pre-programming 1 course outcomes. Let me just see if this happens to be in here. I think it is. Yeah. Okay. Probably pulled it all out. Let me just see if I have it. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get that together. Hold on. I'm sorry. Yeah, some of this stuff it's gonna be my homework to send to you all.
I think I was looking, yeah, that like planning thing that I think
Let's
you
just
had
look
sent
at
us
that. This
earlier.
I could totally share. So
Yeah. That's all I was asking for.
all right, let's share that one. You know, my students here. Sorry, I'm not supposed to show their names, are I? Yeah, let me get that out of the way. So you can't see it. Yeah, why don't I just okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm just gonna make a copy. No, I'm just gonna do a Control A, Control C. I just get in my own. I can share it so much easier. And okay, a little bit no color code, another color here, but we'll call this, what did I call it? Calculator app. And so we have sentence frames. We got the input output variables, their data types. They struggle with. And I'm just going to give you right out. You definitely want to like work with them. Um, they get really confused because there is the input output variables, their data types, and this is for storing the information. And this is for naming the widget. This is the thing they always get mixed up. They give it the same name on both of them. It's like, no, they're different things. One's an object, one is like a number. Of course, spoiler alert, in the Python programming language, here you go. Every piece of data is an object. Everything's an object. Even the none type in Python is an object. Weird stuff. Okay, but anyway, that being said, so then we have the user interface widgets. Here, I should share that first. Sorry, let's do this. Now that I have this, you get access to this, and you'll just make a copy of it and color it, change the font, clean up any details. I'll share it in the chat, but I'll also put it in the slideshow if it ever loads. Okay. Yeah, so we have Laura has to manually sign into Unity once a year. Sorry, share is unavailable at this time. Yeah, there we go. All right, putting this in the chat.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Sure. I I might have posted something in the chat that didn't go to everyone, but this one does. Okay, so let me walk you through it so you can see it. Actually, why not have it zoomed in? So like I said, let me just talk you through. So the programming language, this is because this came about when I did have some students wanting to do Java and Java effects. So for that, their variable names are going to be different, right? So and so they can do that. And then this opens it up. If you teach a different programming language, you can do that. What's the app purpose, goal, problem it solves? And there's their sentence frames. That was a big thing, and I like them. I get better writing out of them, even though I'm doing half the writing for them. Anyways, so then okay, the idea here, input output. So let's say it is the tip calculator, right? The bill amount or the order amount might be the variable name. The data type is going to be a double. And the description is the amount, and I like them to like write as complete sentences. So they could say the order amount variable is a double that stores the amount for their bill in dollars and cents, right? So that'd be the example of the description purpose. Or you could say total amount represents the user's bill. Or is a, yeah, so I like to give it, and then here's where if you do like that, you set the minimum and maximum. That might be important, like in a wind chill calculator. You actually can't set the wind at 0. It doesn't actually calculate it correctly because usually it implies there's a wind and you need at least 4 miles an hour. So you might set that as the minimum. All right, so then we got the user interface. The widget is the data type of the control, and probably a good thing. I'm just going to go ahead and add this, like example. Q label, Q double spin box. And then the control. Now it might be that you might want to swap the control variable name with the widget control, but I always thought it's best to go, what is the control? Now what will I name it? And what does it do? Right. So in this case, this happens to be the Q double spin box. The variable name is order amount, order underscore amount underscore input. I usually use a generic like input if they can't think of anything else, or they might put box or spin box or spin. I'm okay with that as long as they have like, if as long as it kind of follows the same general format, and then what it does. All right, and then there's sentence frames, and then are there any? So like, this is really, most of this is going to be very basic because most of their calculators are not going to have much in it. But if it's a recipe app, well, now you have to have like, I was thinking of breaking this down a little bit more about like in the steps you'll need. Yeah, takeaway anyone can understand, not just your teacher or other programming students, but your next door neighbor, parent, sibling could understand. And there we go, cleaning this up as I go. Possible sentence frames. And then there are some examples of how they do it. Mock-up wireframe. Now, I don't recommend diagrams.net anymore, but the question is, like, for example, can you use Canva? So I'm going to change this to Canva because here's the problem. Diagrams.net, draw.io. I liked it at first because it was part of Google Docs. And you can actually, in Google Drive, see, install app. Let me cancel that. Let's see if we get this. Let me go back to my here. Yeah, let's do to just open up a new tab here. Click on here. Draw.io should still appear in here if you scroll down. And you can add it in there. Anyway, I don't really like that because they end up doing designs. Maybe I could show you some of those. The designs they make sometimes look really weird. So a lot of it is trying to coach them on what they look like, which is part of why I'm doing this video. And I was thinking of having screen captures of all the different apps that I've done and putting that in there. And then like a polished one. And I want them coming back here because this is part of the algorithm, right? So I can get them to think about, all right, how do they work through the app? What do they click? What do they input? And then we can get more advanced using user stories and things like that. So anyway, so I've shared that with you. The questions have to head out. All right, Philip, if you're not gone already, thanks for joining us.
So Chris, on this template, this pre-design, what's your mechanism when you launch a project? 1 period, 2 periods, couple days to pre-design before you let them start coding? I mean, what's your MO on that?
Yeah, I don't introduce them to the PyQt6 first. I introduce them to that. Well, sorry. I start with the idea. Actually, I think it's in there. And I generally, sorry, I keep clicking on, it pops down and I can't get to the app I'm doing. So I give lots of links here. So this is back when I had when we were doing Java. So here's using Java UI controls so you can see what they look like. I want students to see what they look like, right? So I kind of show them what it could look like before I get them doing the PyQt, but many of them jump into it. Here's where they can look at different kinds of calculators. And this is a good one. Like you look at Windchill, you can see how did they design it, right? So there's an example, and they could try to do it and code it themselves, right? So that's another way they can do that. Your question, I don't think I quite answered it, did I? How do I walk them through doing this?
Well, just
Oh,
how
look,
much pre-design time do you allow before they start pounding the
I
keyboard?
I introduce them and have them. I usually give them the link to the calculators and have them explore. And I have them think about it, and might come back to it. And then I'm going to be doing more and more of the ECS. So it might be something where, we have them sort of brainstorm, like generate an idea of different kinds of calculators, and then have them walk through some of that, and maybe sketch out on in their journals, and then maybe get with a partner, and then maybe, you know what I mean, and do more of that. If you're familiar with the ECS model, it's a wonderful way of getting the students, one, talking to each other, having them do the lo-fi, and then they can come in here and start, adding this. And I encourage them sometimes to take pictures of what they're doing and then drop them in. So there's an example. I'll share this one with you. Let's do this. Control A, Control C. Oh yeah, my Google Doc. Yeah, I called it Calculator App. Let me create a new one. That little thing goes away. Sorry, it's not. Come on. There we go. Docs. Gotta change my account. There you go. And paste. Teacher sample. Windchill calculator app. Teacher sample. So I usually model it. Let's do share. Copying the link. Done. Pasting the link to everyone. There you go. Now you can see my polished one here. And see, I did it on a little tablet and I took a picture of it. And I want them doing, I like having them do stuff like that ahead of time. And then maybe showing a map, or maybe even, well, I'd be curious about our school and how they're going to handle phones and stuff. But, there's times where it's helpful to have them just get their phone out. I did that. I coached several students that were having trouble visualizing it and knowing how to even design it. So I had them go pull up an app that they use and that was similar and kind of show them, look, see how this works? And they're like, oh, I get it. So sometimes you just have to give them those examples and have them look at it. And then there we go. She talks about what the user does, etc. Okay, and let's see. I think if you like these kinds of things, let me give you more of these. I think that's a good way to go. I want to show you the research and development class. I think I might have it somewhere, but just in case, let's open it in a new window. Because there's definitely some good tools that I've sort of developed a lot over time. Project management, epics, features. So if you are familiar with design and agile development, you might talk about epics versus features versus user stories. And can I say, by the way, someone asked about Python, and I still got 20 minutes, so I'm glad. I'll get to the developer sprints, Theo. Actually, here I'll show you real quick. PyCon in 2025 developer sprints. Development sprints. Here we go. Oh, here's the 2024 development sprints. I'm just going to send you a link to that so you can kind of see what it is. So I know I'm trying to do everything all at once. Again, ADHD taking over. Okay, so development sprints. Okay, so it's really cool. If you go, it always happens after the main PyCon is there. So the first time I did it, I just went straight and I just went to the development sprints. The last time I did it, there was enough money. I was able to do both PyCon. By the way, I usually use Perkins for going to conferences. Of course, they're giving us less and less, and now everything costs more and more. So I don't know how long I'll get to keep doing stuff like this. But on the development sprints, it was really cool. So they usually, and I'll say like it'll be like Monday through Thursday, and I think I had to leave a day early when I did it. What's really cool is if you get there the day before, you do want to get there the day before on the Sunday, because in the evening they'll have a workshop that walks you through all of the Git that you need to know to work on open source projects. And it was a wonderful training experience. And I feel like I still need to do it a couple more times to get more and more comfortable with it. But then what they do is they have a lot of just people just post or they'll say what they're going to be working on. The first year I worked on palettes, which does Jinja, if you're familiar with that, or Flask. It's a Python library. And I actually did my very first official pull request, got pulled in, and I had to work with a friend from Nike, and he helped me with a lot of it, and I did some of it, but he let me do the pull request. I was very happy he let me do that. And then the next year, I worked with Adafruit and their Pi circuits and some of that stuff. So, anyways, so it was good. I got a good experience with it. And you get to meet cool people, and there's different projects. There's people that are like these hardcore developers that are like just miles beyond me, who are working on what they call the Python C, which is like the core Python, and they're trying to make it. They're those like bigwigs that are just doing the actual Python itself. I'm like, I stay away from that. I'm like so intimidated by them. So anyways, that's how you get involved. Check it out. They usually release the development sprints. I'll be honest, they'll be like tell you who's there, and half the time, like you'll say coverage.py or a GNU mailman or whatever, and half the time they'll have these, and you'll be like, oh, none of these work. But then suddenly, oh, there's that palettes. That's the one I worked on. And then suddenly there'll be new ones that weren't there before. So just if you're interested, check it out. Talk to me more. Send me emails about it. I'd love to help you out with that. Okay, back to what I was going to do. I just wanted to cover that. It was so much fun. Epic's features, user stories. Let's get you a copy of this one here. I sure we could cut. Oh, fine. Let's do it this way. Oh yeah, I was gonna walk you through this. Okay, so let's do this. I get my Google Docs over here. Create a new document. Now I'm gonna be. Oh, look, kept my font. Share. Oh, crud. Well, maybe they'll let me do it. See if this works. If it does, then I don't have to make copies. I can just do it this way. Yep. Excellent. Okay, cool. All right, so let's talk about it. So this is great because it's a model they can look at. So an epic is the big picture thing, right? What this is basically, like what you are going to do, um, like maybe develop native mobile application for blah blah blah. Epics are large bodies of work that can be broken down into smaller, manageable pieces. They represent the big goals you're going to do with your project. So, and then features would be like the little things, the functionality that your app can do. The subsets of epics represent, by the way, you're going to get different definitions, different terms, and trying to find a video that explains this. I would love to basically do that because everywhere you go, they're just weird. It's like everyone has a different name for everything. And I finally just started landing on this. And usually it's best to see kind of like how we do it. And so here we go, user stories. And this is the user story. As a type of user, I want so that it's like, why are you using this app? So and the push notifications. So as a mobile user, I want to receive push notifications for new messages that I can so that I can stay updated on. And so you think about the tip calculator. Let's go back to the tip calculator, right? As a customer on a date, right? You might want to like personalize it, right? I'm on a date and I want to impress my date as a big tipper or whatever. I want to know what 25% of my tip bill would be so I can impress my date. Right? What's the benefit, right? Why are we doing anything that we do? We're usually trying to impress someone, right? Or we're trying to entertain ourselves. But that's a hard one. And I find it's usually the juniors and seniors have to stretch to get there. Some of them figure it out early, but others, and so you just got to think about like, why are you doing this? Why would you want to have this app? And a lot of times students don't know how to write this stuff. Um, and you really have to work with them on that. The granular actionable, whatever. As an admin, I want to send targeted push notifications to specific user segments based on their preferences, blah, blah, blah. So you can take a look at this, look at an Epic for a game, asteroids, gameplay, implementation, blah, blah, blah. So you can take a look at some of these examples. All right, what else did I have here? Epic. Okay, I usually like to put little class resources here, daily slides, design document template. Let's see what this one looks like. Is it the same as before? Oh, this is like the big senior project one. Personal goals. And I probably overkill this one for the students, so take it with a grain of salt. Choose whether you would like to use part of this, all of this, some of it, modify it, whatever. Try this one here. This is senior project class. By the way, and I wanted to make this uh, because you have to do a research paper and because I want them to have a big project that they work on. And they're supposed to have a portfolio. I make this all together. But what I do is I actually break it up, the assignments, as separate assignments. So the bibliography is one, and I like, here's one I think is kind of cool, Play App Store description. And this is kind of like what they're going to showcase at the end. Um, and then testing, you don't have examples of testing, so I might want to find that as well. This is kind of something I like to show. Just like these are all the things you're going to have to do to graduate your project as well. Let's see what else. Setting up a Python project with poetry. There's a video. By the way, I think this is what I did at home. So if you have access to do this, this is probably something you probably won't have this. And I have this. This is the app I was going to show you earlier. Whoa, hold on. Sorry, that blew me away. I want to show you this app actually real quick. Remember I was talking about how it was my spring break. Let's see if we can get this thing running now. Run a debug. Hopefully I don't have any breakpoints. New module. Interesting. Well, I'm not sure what's going on with that one. Could that be resolved? All right, well, sorry. Can't showcase. I was just going to show off anyway. Why do we do anything we do? Try to impress people, right? Or entertain ourselves. Okay, let's see.
Chris, as you're bouncing around there a bit, are you going to change any of your teaching strategies due to the advent of AI?
Yeah. But how? I'm still trying to figure that one out.
Oh, I thought hey, I hired you for answers, Chris. These people
Well,
are waiting for a template to know exactly how to handle AI.
this is how you handle it. You do ECS type model. You have them generate ideas. You have them do it, and you have to figure it out. And then if they can, like, I think part of this is to figure out, like, when are our districts going to give us direction? They're asking us for direction. I think I went to the workshop in the spring we did at Portland State. And they're like, I was talking to all these people at the ESD, like, we don't know. The state has one sort of policy they recommend, and it was only generative AI. It doesn't talk about all the other forms of AI. Anyway, so there's a whole host of issues. We got to talk about it. We got to talk about you know, how they train the data and whether they have rated our, you know, like, did they break copyright? You know, like, did they steal from books and stuff? I don't know. There's so much stuff I'd like to do. But let's put it this way. If they come up with a design, by the way, I would say the GUI calculator has and using PyQt6, where they come up with an idea, they love to come up with ideas, right? Or you give them a project like if they want to do a role-playing game, some of these students make it way more complex, right? So try to teach them the design process. But if they can design it first and think about it first, then it's a question of how do they get it to work. If they've done that first and then they're trying AI to help with that, great. As long as they know how to test, we need to teach them how to test. How do you know this is even working? Can you break it? Right? Because I believe me, I can break Chat GPT real easily. In fact, I have a folder of some PyQt6 or not Py, sorry, Chat GPT, wrong word. So used to that. Where did I put it here? It's under programming. I literally have generative AI samples. So tried doing a model view project. Can I tell you it failed miserably? Doesn't work. Tried, doesn't work. Right? Some of these it doesn't work. Some of it you have to like kind of like figure out how to break it together. So I don't know. They're gonna have to understand, you know, like what are the data types and how does this work? And then they need to know how to test it. And so there's just a lot of stuff that, like, great example, ChatGPT, write an email validation program in Python. Function. Gives me a function. Great. All right. Works, right? They give you sample emails, it works. And then I plug in my school district email at hsd.k12.or.us. Fails. I tell ChatGPT it failed. Oh, I'm sorry. We'll figure. And then it does it, and then it still fails, right? And so, you know, part of it is like learning it's not perfect, and many times, you know, it takes, you know, like some of the fun away from it, but other times it can solve a problem, and maybe leveraging it the right way. These are all my just general thoughts, spitballing it out there. But some of these have worked. I have my own tool I've been working on for automating grading my students' websites, and some of these actually do work. Gradient Finder. This one worked. I ran it and then ended up using it, but I still had to modify it because then I had to bring it into my project. See, at the end, it knows if it's a gradient or not. These are all true, and these two are false. I tried it on other ones, seemed to work, but this is not that complex. I mean, this is using what's called a regular expression, and that's a pretty simple regular expression to do. Give them something harder, you know, like, is it a pseudo element or not? This one's a lot harder because it has to have two colons, not just one. And so some of these will work and some won't. This ended up, I had to train it and I had to teach it and I had to modify it and go back multiple times before I got it to work. And then even once you had that, how do you bring it into your program? So I think, you know, I think I'm not too worried just yet. But I fear one of these days teaching programming will be like teaching history. When do we ever need to know this, right? We'll see.
Chris, thanks for that, because I know that it's a new thing, but it's a tool. It needs to be harnessed and needs
Yeah.
to be, yeah, and that's the point. It needs to be harnessed. And no, I don't expect you to have the answers, but I needed a couple, and you did come through, buddy. Nice work.
Yeah, I just want people to, you know, you got to think it through, right? And but you know, it's so funny. I'll be honest. I've used it to generate lesson plans. I spent a time just showing them all my written descriptions of assignments to the point where I thought they did a good job. And then I was reading it to the students. And I was like, this isn't good. This is not my writing. And I wouldn't say it that way. And I finally got annoyed with it, right? So it's not perfect. And fortunately, we're still okay. Okay, so project testing. Oh, here's another good one. Project development update. This is one of those. This is a tool I think for senior project. I love this because what happens is I give them these project development updates. And it kind of uses things like milestones, important problems to solve, concept prototypes, sentence frames, things like that. So I'm going to definitely share this one with you all. Is got to change that. And what I like about this is when it comes time for them to turn in their final portfolio, it's hard for them to like write about it. I said, guys, you just did this in your project development updates. And you can take that. That's your own writing. You can copy that, paste that in. And so I find that that actually was a great little tool when they were having a hard time meeting their page count. It's like, go back to this, bring it in. You'll meet your page count when you do this. Code highlights, include pictures. By the way, I've decided 20 lines of code or fewer. Otherwise, it's too much code. And taking pictures of the code is much better than copying it and pasting it in because it changes the format. The line breaks don't work right. So that's my pro tip for you all there if you're going to do something like this. This is a great little tool. I love this one. And then I'll probably be putting a few more as we go. And it's good. I like to do stand-up meetings with my senior projects where we go around, say about what are you working on now? Anything you accomplished? What are anything you're stuck on? Project testing section. Let's look at this one. And I'll show you the sample one. So I want them to list their features, user stories, acceptance criteria. No, never mind. I thought that was something. And then I have test ID. What is the test trying to achieve? Instructions on how to run the test, inputs, expected result, actual results. And then we ran out of room and pass or fail. And they're just kind of like working on this as they go. And they just keep modifying this and coming back to it. And then at the end, they put that in their portfolio. And so it shows they've gone through the testing process. I'm giving you these files in reverse order, giving you all the good stuff at the end. I got 2 minutes. And then I want to say, can we save the chat at the end, T? Do we know if we can do that? Because that'll have all the links.
Yeah,
and
we
I can.
are. It's being recorded, so it'll all be available.
Oh yeah, and I was going to do one other thing on the project testing. Here's an API GUI app test where I walked through. That was the one I was going to show you. And because for my seniors, I wanted to walk them through the process. And then as I'm designing it, I'm thinking, I want to make this app. So that's what I did over spring break. And I got it to display images. These are all just little images that are like icons. They go with labels. It's called PyQt6 I think is what it's called. You stick it in a label. But here, this is a web view engine. And it's just rendering a scalable vector graphic, but you could put HTML and render it right in a window like that. I actually got it to work. And then I have tests so they can kind of see what they did. Another one I'll share. And then I'll get a list of, my other, oh wait, I have to change that link. I still got a minute. And then HTML is a little different. So I'll show you that if you're interested, those of you that teach web design. School district's going to be, why is all these getting shared? Somehow I get the feeling they're going to get back to me. All right, why not? All right, so data dictionary. This is IB would do this, and so I started doing it. It's not a bad idea. Either way, you'll get lots of tools. And this is where like the data dictionary is really cool because then when I'm doing that planning, they're already coming up with variable names. I want them to think data types, right? You can take a look at that. Very simple. And then I have them write a little reflection on it with some sample stuff there. Visual design, wireframe. We'll just do software app for time's sake. I'll probably just leave all these open too in case, for a while, so that I can always find them again. All right. Well, it looks like I've gone over. Thanks everyone for sticking it out. I'll look at the remaining ones to get those posted. This is all the research and development class. This is my senior project class, but you could take these and modify them. Project requirements document. Here we go. Anyone still there?
We're still
Good.
here, Chris.
All right. Well,
Well,
thanks.
most of us
Yeah.
anyway. Appreciate your presentation today. Nice work.
Sure.
And I'm gonna lean on you to respond to emails when those of us who have questions ping you. So
Absolutely. Keep them coming. If you follow me on LinkedIn, I put posts every time, or you could follow me on my YouTube channel. For the rest of the summer, I'll just keep putting stuff. I got to the part where I was going to do the layouts next. So I want to, I already kind of covered the vertical box and the horizontal box, but there's and we nested it, but there's a grid view. So you can do it like a grid, like the CSS grid, and then I'll do the nested one where you can swap through screens. It's a little more technical, but thank you, Stephanie. I do appreciate it. And yeah, yeah, and keep asking. I mean, I got other stuff like this. I generally over teach and I over communicate and I overdo everything. So feel free to streamline and just make it work for you.
well, thank you so much.